Outlive, the science and art of longevity. Aging is not what we think it is. For years, we've accepted that growing older means slowly losing our strength, our memories, and our ability to enjoy life. We've watched loved ones struggle with disease, resigning ourselves to the idea that it's just part of the natural process. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if much of what we consider normal aging is actually preventable? Peter Attia, a physician who once dedicated his career to treating diseases when they were already too advanced, had a realization. Modern medicine focuses too much on fixing problems instead of preventing them in the first place. He calls this outdated approach Medicine 2.0, a system designed to fight infections, repair broken bones, and keep people alive after emergencies, but one that fails miserably when it comes to chronic diseases. Heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes don't appear overnight. They take decades to develop, silently shaping the trajectory of our lives. By the time symptoms appear, it's often too late. This book is about changing that. It's about taking control of your health before disease takes control of you. It's about longevity. Not just living longer, but living better, staying strong, independent, and mentally sharp for as long as possible. Attia presents a new way of thinking, what he calls Medicine 3.0, a proactive approach that focuses on extending health span, not just lifespan. If you've ever wondered whether it's possible to live a long, healthy life without the usual decline, this is the perfect place to start. Subscribe to our channel for more book summaries every week, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. This is just an introduction. If you want to go deeper, we highly recommend getting the full book. Part 2, The Long Game, Rethinking Aging and Medicine. For most of human history, death came fast and without warning. Infections, accidents, and violence took lives quickly, and medicine evolved to respond to these immediate threats. Antibiotics, surgery, and emergency interventions became our most celebrated victories, saving countless lives from illnesses that would have been fatal just a century ago. But something changed. As modern medicine advanced, people stopped dying young and instead started facing a new enemy: the slow decay of chronic disease. Heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and Alzheimer's crept in, not as sudden events, but as consequences of decades-long processes that had been silently unfolding within the body. Medicine had mastered the art of saving lives in the short term, but it had failed to address the gradual, inevitable decline that so many experience as they age. Peter Attia saw this firsthand. As a young doctor, he worked in some of the most intense medical environments, performing high-risk surgeries, treating trauma victims, and standing at the bedside of patients who had run out of options. He believed he was making a difference, but over time, a question began to haunt him. Were these efforts truly helping, or were they simply catching people at the last possible moment, when it was already too late? He felt like someone desperately trying to catch eggs as they fell from a building, doing everything possible to prevent them from breaking upon impact. But no matter how fast he moved, how skilled he became, the eggs kept falling. At some point, he realized that the real problem wasn't how well he caught them. It was the fact that no one was looking up to stop them from falling in the first place. The modern medical system is structured to deal with crises, but it struggles with prevention. It reacts rather than anticipates. A person with a heart attack will receive world-class treatment, but long before that moment, the arteries had already been narrowing, the damage accumulating year after year. Cancer, often detected when it's already well established, begins decades earlier at the cellular level. Alzheimer's, which robs people of their memories and identities, starts long before the first sign of forgetfulness. The seeds of these diseases are planted early, nurtured by poor lifestyle choices, genetic predispositions, and systemic neglect. This approach to medicine, which Attia calls Medicine 2.0, is built on the foundation of treating disease only when it becomes a clear and immediate problem. It sees the body as something to be repaired, not as something to be maintained. A person can visit their doctor for years, hearing that everything looks normal based on routine blood work, only to wake up one day with a catastrophic diagnosis. Normal, as it turns out, is not the same as optimal. By the time a condition is labeled a disease, It has already progressed beyond the point of easy intervention. The real challenge is not simply extending life, but extending quality of life. It is not enough to add years to a lifespan if those years are spent in frailty, suffering, and cognitive decline. The goal must be to extend health span, the period in which a person remains physically and mentally vibrant. Most people don't fear death as much as they fear the slow, painful process of losing their independence, of watching their bodies and minds deteriorate while they are still alive. This is what must be prevented, not just the final moment of mortality. The shift from fast death to slow death has created a gap in how we approach aging. People assume that chronic diseases are simply a matter of bad luck or genetics, that some are destined to develop diabetes, heart disease, or dementia while others escape it. But this perspective ignores the fact that these conditions are not sudden afflictions. They are processes influenced by choices made over decades. Medicine 2.0 waits until the signs are undeniable, until the symptoms appear, and only then does it intervene. The problem is that by then, the options are limited, the damage has been done, and the solutions often feel like last-minute attempts to salvage what remains. Attia introduces Medicine 3.0, a new way of thinking about health that doesn't wait for disease to appear before taking action. Instead of focusing on lifespan alone, it prioritizes health span, recognizing that longevity is meaningless if those extra years are spent in suffering. This approach does not simply treat problems. It seeks to prevent them from occurring in the first place. The key lies in understanding that chronic diseases, the very ones responsible for most deaths today, do not emerge overnight. They are the result of years of metabolic dysfunction, unchecked inflammation, and gradual physiological decline. For years, doctors have relied on simple markers like cholesterol levels and BMI to gauge health. But these numbers tell only part of the story. A person can have normal cholesterol and still be at high risk for heart disease. They can have a healthy body weight and yet be metabolically compromised. Medicine 3.0 shifts the focus away from reactive treatments and instead emphasizes detailed, individualized assessments that identify risks before they become problems. It involves measuring advanced biomarkers, using imaging techniques to detect hidden disease, and recognizing that optimal health is not about avoiding a diagnosis. It is about preventing the conditions that lead to one. One of the most fundamental aspects of Medicine 3.0 is the recognition that traditional medical guidelines are often outdated, oversimplified, and based on an approach that treats all patients as if they are the same. The idea that everyone should follow the same dietary recommendations, the same exercise routines, and the same screening schedules ignores the reality that people age differently. Some remain active and independent well into their 80s, while others struggle with mobility and cognitive function decades earlier. The difference is not random. It is a result of compounding choices made over time. Attia argues that the best way to approach longevity is not to chase numbers or focus solely on lifespan, but to develop a strategy that ensures quality of life at every stage. He introduces the concept of the centenarian decathlon, a way of thinking about aging that prepares the body for the physical challenges that come with getting older. The ability to walk upstairs, to carry groceries, to get up from the floor without assistance. These are not just conveniences, they are the foundation of independence. Strength, mobility, and stability are not things to think about only when they start to decline. They must be built and maintained long before they are needed. Nutrition, exercise, sleep, and emotional health form the pillars of Medicine 3.0, but they are not treated as generic recommendations. Attia emphasizes the importance of personalization, understanding that what works for one person may not work for another. Some may thrive on a low-carbohydrate diet, while others require a different approach. Some may benefit from long-endurance training, while others need strength-focused routines. The key is to find what works on an individual level, not to follow broad guidelines that were designed for statistical averages rather than real people. For decades, the medical system has operated under the assumption that interventions are necessary only when something is already wrong. Part 3. The Science of Longevity, Understanding the Four Horsemen. Most people don't die from accidents or infections anymore. The real threats, the ones that quietly shape the future of health, don't announce themselves with sudden pain or dramatic symptoms. They build slowly, over decades, hidden beneath the surface, unnoticed until they are too advanced to ignore. These are the diseases that steal years, not in an instant, but gradually, chipping away at strength, memory, and independence. They are what Peter Attia calls the four horsemen: heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, and metabolic dysfunction. They are the conditions responsible for the majority of deaths in the modern world. And yet most people don't realize that they start long before the first symptoms appear. The problem is that by the time these diseases are diagnosed, the damage has already been done. The real work of longevity is not about treating them once they take hold. It's about stopping them before they begin. Heart disease is often thought of as something that happens suddenly, a heart attack, a stroke, a moment of crisis. But the truth is that it begins years, even decades, before that moment. The arteries narrow little by little, accumulating plaque that silently reduces blood flow. Inflammation builds, slowly creating the perfect conditions for a catastrophic event. Cholesterol, which has long been demonized as the enemy, is not the real problem. The issue is how cholesterol interacts with the arterial walls, how it oxidizes and leads to inflammation that triggers the process of blockage. Most standard tests measure cholesterol levels, but they miss the real danger: the presence of small, dense LDL particles that are far more likely to cause damage. The biggest risk factor is not a single high number on a test, but the slow accumulation of hidden problems that go unnoticed until it is too late. The good news is that heart disease is not inevitable. Understanding the real markers of risk allows for earlier interventions, ones that can prevent the disease from ever reaching the point of crisis. Cancer is another disease that most people think of as an unpredictable stroke of bad luck. The reality is far more complex. Cancer is not a single disease, but a collection of conditions driven by uncontrolled cell growth. Some are fast-moving and aggressive, while others take years to develop before they become life-threatening. What makes cancer so dangerous is its ability to go undetected for long periods, often growing quietly while the body shows no signs of trouble. Traditional medicine focuses on treating cancer after it is discovered, but by then, the disease has often spread beyond control. The real battle against cancer is not about chemotherapy or surgery. It is about understanding what allows these rogue cells to take hold in the first place. Certain cancers thrive in specific environments, influenced by inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, and immune system health. Some cancers rely on sugar to grow, using glucose as fuel to multiply rapidly. This connection between metabolism and cancer is one of the most overlooked areas in modern medicine. Prevention is not just about avoiding environmental toxins or genetic predispositions. It is about creating a biological environment that makes it harder for cancer to thrive. Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are among the most feared conditions associated with aging. Losing physical strength is one thing. Losing the ability to think, remember, and function independently is another. These diseases do not happen overnight. The first changes in the brain can begin years before any memory loss is noticeable. One of the most significant discoveries in recent years is that many cases of Alzheimer's share characteristics with metabolic disorders, leading some researchers to call it type 3 diabetes. The brain relies on glucose for energy, but when insulin resistance develops, the brain's ability to process glucose declines, leading to damage over time. Chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and vascular health also play a role. While there is no cure for Alzheimer's, there is strong evidence that lifestyle choices can influence cognitive decline. The brain, like any other organ, can be protected and strengthened through the right interventions long before the first signs of memory loss appear. Metabolic dysfunction is the foundation upon which many of these diseases develop. Insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, and poor energy regulation set the stage for heart disease, cancer, and neurodegeneration. Type 2 diabetes is often seen as a condition that only affects blood sugar, but in reality, it is a disease that damages multiple systems in the body. Excess glucose in the bloodstream leads to oxidative stress, damages blood vessels, and creates an environment where other diseases can flourish. The way the body processes energy is fundamental to longevity. The ability to efficiently use and store energy, to regulate blood sugar without excessive spikes and crashes, is one of the most important factors in long-term health. Many people walk around with early signs of metabolic dysfunction for years without realizing it. They don't have full-blown diabetes yet, but they are on the path toward it, slowly developing resistance to insulin, accumulating fat around their organs, and increasing their risk for nearly every major chronic disease. The problem with traditional medicine is that it treats these conditions as separate, unrelated issues. Heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes are seen as different battles, each requiring its own strategy, its own medications, its own treatments. But in reality, they share common roots. Chronic inflammation, poor metabolic health, and oxidative stress fuel all of them. The best approach is not to treat them individually, but to understand the underlying processes that drive them all. This is where modern medicine falls short. It waits for these diseases to manifest, then applies treatments designed to slow them down or manage symptoms. But the better approach is to stop them before they start, to create an internal environment where they cannot easily take hold. One of the greatest myths about aging is that decline is inevitable. People assume that as they get older, they will naturally become weaker, slower, and more vulnerable to disease. But much of what is attributed to aging is actually the cumulative effect of decades of damage that could have been prevented. The body is incredibly resilient when given the right conditions. Strength can be maintained, cognitive function can be preserved, and metabolic health can be optimized. The key is to start long before symptoms appear. Most people wait until they have high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or early cognitive decline before they take action. By then, they are already fighting an uphill battle. True longevity is about being proactive, understanding how the body changes over time, and taking steps to ensure that those changes happen at a much slower rate than what is commonly accepted. Peter Attia's approach is not about chasing longevity as a number. It is not about living to 100 just for the sake of it. It is about making sure that every additional year is one worth living, free from unnecessary suffering and dependence. The four horsemen do not have to be inevitable. They are not random acts of fate. They are processes, ones that can be influenced and, in many cases, prevented through the right strategies. Part 4. The power of exercise, the best longevity drug. Aging is often seen as a slow decline, an inevitable slide into weakness and fragility. Muscles shrink, bones thin, balance fades, and what was once effortless becomes a struggle. But this is not a natural law. It is not a predetermined outcome written in genetics. It is a result of choices, habits, and most importantly, inactivity. The body does not simply break down with age. It adapts to how it is used. If movement is neglected, if strength is allowed to wither, the body follows that path. But if movement is prioritized, if strength is cultivated, aging takes a different shape. Peter Attia calls exercise the most powerful longevity drug, not as a metaphor, but as a reality. No medication, no supplement, no medical procedure comes close to offering the benefits that consistent movement provides. The difference between those who age with resilience and those who deteriorate rapidly is not luck. It is training. For most people, exercise is framed as a tool for weight loss, something to be done when the scale shows an unwanted number. But weight is not the primary concern when it comes to longevity. Strength, endurance, stability, and mobility are what determine how well a person moves through life. Being able to lift, carry, push, and pull are not just athletic skills. They are the foundation of independence. The ability to get up from the floor without assistance, to carry groceries, to climb stairs without pain. These are not luxuries. They are essential. The body responds to the demands placed upon it. If those demands are minimal, strength diminishes. If those demands are consistent and challenging, the body adapts, maintaining the capacity to move freely. The most common reason older adults lose their independence is not illness, but frailty. A fall that leads to a broken hip, a loss of muscle that makes it difficult to stand up, a gradual decline in mobility that turns one simple task into burdens. The difference between someone who remains active into their later years and someone who becomes dependent is not just genetics, but preparation. This is why Attia developed the idea of the centenarian decathlon, a framework for training the body not for appearance, but for function. The goal is to prepare for the physical challenges that come with age long before they arrive. Training is not about looking good in a mirror. It is about ensuring that movement remains effortless for as long as possible. Cardiovascular endurance is one of the most overlooked aspects of longevity. The heart is a muscle, and like any muscle, it weakens without use. Most people assume that walking daily or moving casually is enough to maintain heart health, but this is far from true. The heart needs to be challenged, forced to work at higher intensities, pushed beyond its comfortable baseline. Training the heart means engaging in sustained, rhythmic activities that elevate the heart rate for extended periods. The ability to climb stairs without gasping for breath, to keep up with children or grandchildren, to move without fatigue. These are the markers of cardiovascular health. Without proper training, endurance fades, making even the simplest movements feel like a strain. Strength is often dismissed as something for bodybuilders, but in reality, it is the key to longevity. Muscle mass is not just about aesthetics. It is one of the most significant predictors of overall health. The more muscle a person maintains, the greater their metabolic health. The stronger their bones, the better their resilience against injury. When muscle is lost, it is not just strength that diminishes, but stability, balance, and energy regulation. Sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass with age, is one of the biggest drivers of frailty, but it is not inevitable. Muscle can be built at any age, and strength training remains one of the most effective ways to preserve function. Resistance exercises, lifting, pushing, pulling, create the stimulus the body needs to maintain and grow muscle. Without this stimulus, the body assumes that muscle is unnecessary and begins breaking it down. The loss of muscle is not just about weakness. It is about the ability to stand, walk, lift, and live independently. Stability and mobility determine whether the body moves freely or struggles against itself. Joints stiffen when they are not taken to their full range of motion. Balance deteriorates when it is not challenged. Flexibility is not about touching toes or performing elaborate stretches. It is about ensuring that the body can move without pain or restriction. Training mobility means practicing movements that reinforce fluid motion, allowing the body to bend, twist, and reach without discomfort. Stability training prevents falls, ensuring that the body reacts efficiently to changes in position and maintains control in every movement. The problem with traditional exercise recommendations is that they are too vague. Most people are told to move more, to walk daily, to engage in moderate activity. But longevity demands more than casual movement. It requires structured, intentional training that targets all aspects of physical health. The best exercise routine is not one that burns the most calories, but one that prepares the body for the decades ahead. Attia emphasizes that training should be personalized, structured in a way that meets individual needs and adapts over time. There is no universal formula, no single program that fits everyone. What matters is consistency, progression, and a commitment to movement as a lifelong practice. One of the greatest misconceptions about aging is that slowing down is natural. People assume that as they get older, they should do less, avoid strain, and minimize exertion. But this is precisely what accelerates decline. The body is designed to move, and it thrives under challenge. When movement is reduced, the systems that support it begin to deteriorate. The heart weakens, the muscles shrink, the joints stiffen, and the nervous system loses its ability to coordinate movement efficiently. The best way to age well is not to avoid effort, but to embrace it. Strength is not just for the young. Endurance is not just for athletes. Every person has the capacity to maintain a high level of function, regardless of age, as long as movement remains a priority. Exercise is not just about longevity, it is about quality of life. The difference between someone who remains active and someone who becomes dependent is not just a matter of luck. It is a result of daily choices. The strongest predictor of physical independence in later years is not medication, genetics, or medical treatment. It is strength, the ability to move without pain, to lift without strain, to walk without assistance. These are the true markers of health. The time to build them is not when they start to fade, but long before. Attia's message is clear. If there is one intervention that makes the biggest impact on aging, it is movement. There is no pill that can replicate the effects of exercise. No medical procedure can restore what years of inactivity have taken away. The best way to ensure a long, healthy, independent life is to train the body to sustain it. Exercise is not optional. It is the foundation of longevity. Those who invest in it today will reap the benefits for decades to come. The question is not whether the body will age, but how well it will do so. The choice to move is the choice to control that outcome. Part 5. Nutrition beyond diets and fads. The way people eat is often shaped by trends, advice from magazines, and quick-fix solutions that promise health in the form of a restrictive plan. Nutrition has been reduced to a series of rigid rules. Eat this, avoid that, count these, cut those. But the truth is far more nuanced, and the science of longevity does not fit into a simple diet plan. What a person eats affects every aspect of health, from metabolism to cognitive function, from muscle preservation to disease prevention. Food is not just fuel. It is information, shaping the way cells function, influencing inflammation, and determining the body's ability to repair and regenerate. For years, fat was demonized, blamed for heart disease and weight gain, leading to the widespread adoption of low-fat diets. But removing fat often meant replacing it with sugar and processed carbohydrates, which had an entirely different set of consequences. The rise of metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and chronic inflammation followed, creating the perfect conditions for the very diseases people were trying to avoid. The real issue was not fat itself, but the way it was misunderstood. The body needs healthy fats to function, to support brain health, to regulate hormones, and to maintain cellular integrity. What matters is the quality and source of the fat, not its mere presence in the diet. Carbohydrates have been similarly misunderstood. The problem is not carbohydrates in isolation, but how they are processed, how they interact with insulin, and how they are consumed in excess. The modern diet is saturated with refined sugars, rapidly absorbed carbohydrates that create spikes in blood sugar, triggering cycles of insulin release that over time contribute to insulin resistance. The ability to regulate blood sugar is one of the most crucial aspects of metabolic health. When this system falters, it affects not just weight, but the risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and even cancer. The difference between a carbohydrate that supports health and one that undermines it is found in its structure, in its fiber content, in how it interacts with the body's metabolic systems. Protein is often overlooked in discussions about longevity, dismissed as something only bodybuilders need to focus on. But protein is essential for maintaining muscle mass, for preserving strength, for supporting immune function. As people age, they naturally lose muscle, a process called sarcopenia. Without adequate protein intake, this loss accelerates, leading to frailty, loss of mobility, and increased risk of injury. The amount and timing of protein intake matter, influencing how the body repairs and rebuilds itself. It is not just about eating enough protein, but about distributing it throughout the day in a way that maximizes its benefits. Fasting has gained attention as a powerful tool for metabolic health, but like any approach, it is not a universal solution. The body operates in cycles of feeding and fasting, using energy, storing it, breaking it down. When fasting is used strategically, it can improve insulin sensitivity, enhance cellular repair, and even reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. But fasting is not just about skipping meals. It is about understanding how the body shifts between fuel sources, how it mobilizes stored energy, how it adapts to periods without food. The key is to find a balance. to use fasting as a tool rather than a rigid rule. One of the most damaging myths in nutrition is the idea that a single diet works for everyone. The reality is that what works for one person may not work for another. Genetics, metabolism, activity levels, and personal health history all influence how food is processed and utilized. The goal is not to follow a set of predetermined guidelines, but to develop a way of eating that supports long-term health, that maintains metabolic flexibility, that provides the necessary nutrients without unnecessary harm. The most powerful approach to nutrition is not extreme restriction, but awareness. It is about understanding the relationship between food and longevity, about recognizing that every meal is an opportunity to support or undermine health. Food is not just about pleasure or discipline. It is about creating the internal conditions that allow the body to thrive for decades. The best diet is not the one that is most popular or easiest to follow. It is the one that sustains energy, preserves function, and ensures resilience against the diseases of aging. Part 6. Sleep and emotional health, the overlooked pillars of longevity. For years, longevity has been discussed in terms of physical health, exercise, nutrition, disease prevention, but the role of sleep and emotional well-being in living a long and fulfilling life has often been dismissed. The body is not just a machine that needs fuel and maintenance. It is a complex system in which stress, rest, and mental resilience are just as important as diet and movement. The way a person sleeps and manages emotions directly affects how they age, how their brain functions, and how well their body fights disease. Sleep and emotional health are not secondary concerns. They are fundamental to extending health span, preventing chronic conditions, and maintaining a sense of vitality well into later years. Sleep is often sacrificed in the name of productivity, social obligations, or even entertainment. Losing an hour here or there seems harmless, something to be corrected on the weekend or made up with an extra cup of coffee. But the consequences of chronic sleep deprivation go far beyond feeling tired. The body does not just rest during sleep. It repairs, restores, and regulates nearly every system necessary for long-term health. Deep sleep is when the brain clears out toxins, when memory is consolidated, when cells regenerate and inflammation is reduced. A single night of poor sleep affects insulin sensitivity, making the body less efficient at processing glucose and increasing the risk of metabolic dysfunction. Chronic sleep deprivation increases the risk of heart disease, neurodegeneration, and even certain types of cancer. The connection between sleep and cognitive health is undeniable. People who consistently get poor sleep in midlife are far more likely to experience cognitive decline later on. The brain needs sleep as much as the body does, and neglecting it accelerates aging in ways that are not always immediately visible. Quality of sleep is just as important as quantity. Many people assume that spending enough hours in bed is sufficient, but if sleep is fragmented, shallow, or disrupted by stress and poor habits, the benefits are lost. Late-night screen exposure, alcohol consumption, and irregular sleep schedules all interfere with the body's natural rhythms, preventing deep, restorative rest. The modern world is filled with distractions that push sleep to the margins, but prioritizing it is one of the most effective ways to protect long-term health. Sleep is not a passive state. It is an active process, one that needs to be respected and supported in the same way as diet and exercise. Emotional health is often treated as a separate issue from physical health, but in reality, they are deeply connected. Chronic stress is one of the most damaging factors for longevity, increasing inflammation, disrupting hormone balance, and weakening the immune system. The body is designed to handle short bursts of stress, but when stress becomes a constant presence, it shifts from being a survival mechanism to a destructive force. High levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, accelerate aging, contribute to weight gain, and increase the risk of chronic diseases. Emotional resilience is not just about feeling good. It is about protecting the body from the physiological wear and tear that stress causes over time. Relationships, social connection, and a sense of purpose play a crucial role in longevity. People who maintain strong social ties, who feel connected to a community, who have a sense of meaning in their daily lives, tend to live longer and experience better health outcomes. Loneliness, on the other hand, has been linked to increased mortality risk, comparable to the dangers of smoking or obesity. Emotional well-being is not just about avoiding sadness or stress. It is about actively cultivating relationships, finding fulfillment, and maintaining a mindset that supports long-term health. The brain and body do not function independently of emotions. How a person feels influences their immune system, their risk of disease, and even their ability to recover from illness. Addressing sleep and emotional health is not just about living longer. It is about ensuring that longevity is accompanied by vitality, by cognitive clarity, by the ability to enjoy life fully. The modern world often treats rest and mental well-being as luxuries, things to be prioritized only after work, obligations, and other responsibilities. But without them, no amount of exercise or nutrition can fully compensate. The foundation of a long, healthy life is not just built on physical habits, but on the recognition that the mind and body are inseparable. Protecting sleep and emotional health is not an afterthought. It is one of the most powerful tools for longevity, one that too many people overlook until the effects of neglect begin to take hold. The time to address them is not when the damage is already done, but long before, when the benefits can still be fully realized. Part 7. The path to a longer, healthier life. Longevity is not just about living longer. It is about ensuring that those extra years are filled with vitality, strength, and purpose. The difference between someone who reaches old age in a state of independence and someone who struggles with frailty is not a matter of luck. It is the result of years of choices, habits, and awareness of how the body functions over time. The key to extending health span is not found in a single solution, but in a combination of approaches that address the body's needs at every level. The way aging unfolds is not inevitable. The gradual decline that so many people experience is not simply a function of time, but a reflection of how well their bodies have been maintained. Strength does not have to disappear with age. Muscle loss can be prevented. Cognitive decline is not unavoidable. The risk of neurodegenerative diseases can be reduced. Heart disease and metabolic dysfunction do not have to be accepted as natural consequences of getting older. Medicine has spent too much time focusing on treating disease after it appears rather than preventing it in the first place. But the greatest opportunities for longevity lie in avoiding the conditions that shorten life before they ever take hold. Every choice made throughout life compounds over time, creating a trajectory that leads toward either resilience or vulnerability. The way a person moves, eats, sleeps, and manages stress shapes their future far more than genetics alone. Most chronic diseases do not appear suddenly. They develop silently for years, often decades, before the first symptoms emerge. The body does not fall apart overnight. It adapts to its environment, responding to the signals it receives. If those signals reinforce strength, stability, and balance, the body maintains its ability to function at a high level. If those signals reinforce inactivity, poor nutrition, and chronic stress, the body begins to deteriorate long before aging itself becomes a factor. The idea of aging well is not about finding a way to extend life at any cost. It is about ensuring that every additional year is one worth living. The ability to remain physically capable, mentally sharp, and emotionally engaged is what separates true longevity from mere survival. Many people fear aging not because they are afraid of living longer, but because they are afraid of losing their independence, their cognitive function, their ability to experience life fully. The goal of longevity is not just to delay death, but to maximize life. The best approach to aging is one that embraces prevention rather than treatment. Waiting until a disease appears before taking action is like waiting until a house is on fire before deciding to install a smoke detector. The body gives warning signs long before conditions become serious, but modern medicine is not designed to address these signals early. It focuses on disease management, not optimization. But there is an alternative, an approach that prioritizes health span over lifespan, that seeks to build a foundation of strength rather than patch problems as they arise. The science of longevity is clear. Strength is the foundation of physical independence. Mobility determines whether movement remains effortless or becomes a challenge. Cardiovascular health dictates whether the body can sustain energy, endurance, and recovery. Nutrition provides the fuel for cellular repair and resilience. Sleep restores the body, clears the brain, and regulates metabolism. Emotional well-being protects against chronic stress, inflammation, and cognitive decline. These are not separate elements. They are interconnected, each influencing the other in ways that determine how well a person ages. The time to act is not when health begins to decline, but long before. The best interventions are not reactive but proactive. The ability to maintain function into later years depends on the habits built in the present. The small, daily choices made today determine the quality of life decades from now. The strength of the muscles, the clarity of the mind, the efficiency of the metabolism, all of these are shaped by consistency. Longevity is not about extreme interventions or chasing miracle cures. It is about making sustainable, evidence-based choices that support long-term health. Aging does not have to mean decline. The human body is capable of adapting, of maintaining function, of preserving vitality when given the right conditions. The most important step is to shift the way aging is perceived. It is not something to be feared or avoided. It is something to be prepared for, something that can be shaped and optimized. The body is not a machine that inevitably breaks down. It is a dynamic system that responds to care, attention, and deliberate effort. The path to a longer, healthier life is not found in a single prescription, a single habit, or a single breakthrough. It is the result of a comprehensive approach that acknowledges that longevity is about more than just adding years. It is about ensuring that those years are lived with strength, clarity, and purpose. The time to build that future is now, not later. Every decision made today is an investment in the years to come. The future of health is not about treating disease. It is about preventing it before it ever begins.